Скрынник, Дима, скрынник. Когда такой замок, алё? Что это? Это World Edit? Нифига себе.
Там больше ничего не осталось?
Да, я хочу кушать.
Я тоже хочу есть. Где бы пожрать?
Ребята, есть же кухня Зака.
Подписывайтесь!
И ставьте лайки.
Чаще, погоди, про биомы я хочу показать видосом, где чел прям максимально запотел, просто невероятным образом. Не знаю, как его найти, конечно. Короче, он делает кастомную карту, кастомные биомы в том числе. То есть вот то, что он, это просто уже созданные именно пока просто пустая карта, но он еще хочет трансформировать каждую структуру, то есть сделать из каждой, допустим, маленький портал, сделать из него что-то эпичное. Храм пустыни обычный, хочет его трансформировать в крутой, и вот и так далее, короче. Деревня обычная в крутую превратить, и так далее. Но он просто напихал на одну карту. Ну, так это довольно круто. Это, в принципе, даже вот этот остров выглядит охуенно, Апофемыч. Ну, камон. Разве от него уже нет готового эпизода, который стоит дофига бачей? Не знаю. Подожди, где? А, стоп, 3 недели назад? Вот это, что ли? Апгрейдинг комментарий Майнкрафт. Я не видел этого сам, стоп. 1100 часов. Так, ну-ка.
So, first things first, we've got to remove the original darkwood trees to make way for our brand new forest.
Это все, это прям финальное, правильно понимаю? А, он пишет, я про датапак, который это генерит, а не эпизод. Эпизод тоже новый, о, стоп. Это, походу, финальный причем, да?
You can see, I really wanted to upgrade the scale of these trees dramatically to create a spooky and dense forest, like something from a fairy tale. The default darkwood trees aren't a crazy spectacle, but they do have a large trunk, which is why I opted for such a massive scale, so that when you stand at the foot of them, you really are rather dwarfed in comparison. Because I'm building this world and making it survival friendly,
Я бы ускорил немножко, да, видос? Вы не против?
Had enough branches to stop the leaves from decaying once placed and looking like a big old broccoli.
Именно посмотреть, что получается.
Making sure that they had enough variation in height and shape to avoid a repetitive looking forest. I tried decorating the branches with hanging vines, but I removed them as I didn't want these trees to be too similar to our jungle trees once we upgrade them. I thought it would make sense to create a few little man-made bridges to connect the plains biome to the darkwood at different ends of the biome. Perhaps this was built by the villagers to aid in traveling across to trade in each other's biome. Okay, it's time for some major changes. I really wanted to add a bit of variation to the landscape, especially...
А как вот это делается? Это World Edit такой идет, нихуя себе. Вы чего? Вы видели? Как он сделал огромную гору, what the fuck? Вот сейчас, смотри, вот сейчас. Во, что это было? How? Во. What the fuck? Что это? Это World Edit? Нифига себе. Это типа реки. Офигеть, ладно, имба.
Way too flat. So I quite literally repositioned and pasted an entire mountainscape. Then to add
это
further
каньон, типа, да? Или это нет, это глубокая река?
I
Нет, это
cut a
каньон.
major crevice throughout the entire biome for the river
Еще есть еще World Painter для изменения биомов, офигеть.
through and connect it to the large lake at the center of the island. This alone took a fair amount of time, even though I haven't taken things to the craziest scale like some of my other projects. Because this is a survival world after all. With that done, I started layering the landscape up the side of this hill to create a tiered effect, as this will be the foundations for our new village. As you can see, I dug out a few routes for some rivers and waterfalls, stemming from a large lake of water that sits behind the village, encased in some mysterious mountain peaks. I then tidied things stemming from a large lake of water that sits behind the village, encased in some mysterious mountain peaks. I then tidied things up, including a pathway that snakes up the layered landscape, and finally added in the rivers and waterfalls throughout. With a lot of the main terraforming complete, it's time to include some of those new darkwood trees that we just made and gradually fill out the forest. I also included a branching off pathway and bridge to the right of where our new village would be, then continued placing in our new gigantic trees and filling up the landscape. Before placing the rest of the trees, I wanted to include a small lake with a monument in the center. Legend says that the most powerful sword in the land was placed here by a mysterious wizard, who claimed that only a worthy adventurer would be able to retrieve it. Can you guess what this story was inspired by? Now we've got to fill out the remaining half of the biome to finish our dense dark wood.
Блин, тоже деревья все чуть-чуть разные, то есть это какой-то датапак, скорее всего, делают, да, на генерацию рандомного дерева, окей. Нахер он вначале вручную так строил, если есть датапак?
You could build an entire kingdom from chopping down even just one of these trees. But before moving on, we've got to fill this forest with some shrubbery and rock
он накидывает, он копирует,
also, I'm not
все,
really
понял.
sure why, but my Minecraft skin has decided to just disappear throughout the video. So apparently, Minecraft Steve is going to be helping me build.
Да, он делает типа такие участки, он просто их копирует, вставляет камешки и все такое.
Making it much more dense and like an overgrown woodland. These decorations literally cover the entire biome. So you won't want to stray too far from the pathway, otherwise you might just get lost. As I mentioned, this video alone has taken about 100 hours. So if you want me to transform the next biome and eventually get the completed world download for yourself via Patreon, then you've got to get this video to 250,000 likes. I've had to bump it up quite a bit since the last episode because you guys keep hitting the like goal within a few hours. Now, since the main pathway weaves throughout the forest, I whipped up a few small man-made bridges to cross the crevice and allow access between each section of the biome. As for the main entrance to the village, I tweaked the landscape and then built a diagonal bridge, matching the style from the previous
Пока что это куда менее интересный эпизод, чем второй, кстати говоря, потому что во втором он именно постройки делал. А, вот, сейчас дальше будет, ладно.
Finally, I added some more small bridges to cross the rivers and waterfalls, and connected up the pathway that winds throughout our future village. Starting with the first of our profession-based buildings for the Darkwood village, the cleric, or I suppose in this case, the rabbi. Now, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I plan to change things up for the village. I wanted to build a synagogue. The synagogue is a Jewish place of worship.
Знаете что? Стоп, а как назывался вот этот храм? Как выглядел? Сейчас, храм доктора Стрэнджа. Да, вот такой, точно, кстати. Не обязательно как отдельную постройку в деревне, в смысле, с таким логотипом. Клевая отсылка, не?
However, the most notable features I found from reference images of real-life synagogues were large circular windows sandwiched between two towers with bulb-like roofs. Now remember that this is meant to be my own take on this style of religious building, and is in no way meant to be an accurate representation of a real synagogue. I plan to continue making alternative places of worship in other biome towers, and with the design laid out, I mirrored it to the other side of the building.
Да, для клерика, конечно, жирновато, согласен, но
I ended up making this building once I attempted placing it down. So I had to do some tweaking to the landscape in order to position it at the highest tier of the village. Our second profession-based building is for the cartographer. I settled on a roofed fantasy style for this building, which is going to loosely persist throughout the remainder of the village. I'm aware that a Darkwood village doesn't actually exist in-game. However, as I've mentioned previously, I intend to make custom villages even for biomes that don't spawn their own villages.
такое, просто обычный дом.
Because the cartographer lives here, I had to include a separate lookout tower that connects to the side of the building.
Типа он сделал смотровую башню, то есть все, ну такое. Кузнец. Ну тоже просто сделал более симпатичным. Получилось хорошо. Ну картограф это телескоп логичный, не? Какой-нибудь.
With the weaponsmith complete, of course, I had to accompany it with an armorer. I decided on an entirely new design for this building, and I made a start on it by working on a diagonal axis. You can see the vanilla armorer building to the right, which I used as a reference.
Блин, ну то, что он диагонально сделал, забавно смотрится, необычно, ладно.
With the main profession buildings complete, I placed them at different levels across the village. As for filling up the remaining space, I used red wool.
И как же охуенно смотрится, что это на разных уровнях скал. Уф.
To position and place down the remaining village houses. So from the red wool, I started building up individual village houses on loads of different angles.
Астроном это логично. В Майнкрафте нет астронома.
Village houses and technically transform them is because it's going to be pretty much impossible to do that, especially when I'm challenging myself to build most of these houses on a diagonal. This also means I'm building
Он еще почти все диагонально, да, построил.
Limiting my use of world edit to duplicate buildings, avoiding repetition and creating a more immersive environment for you guys to explore. Now remember, each of these buildings may be small, but they're also all fully furnished and have usable beautiful interiors, meaning this process took plenty of time. This village ended up being rather large and jam-packed with houses, which was the ultimate goal. As I stated earlier, the aim for this entire biome was to make things much larger than its vanilla predecessor. Since Mojang didn't create a Darkwood village, I had to do it justice and do something a little more wild.
Netflix, Warner Brothers вообще прям точно запрещены.
Hours of working and really going all out. This project is really helping me to show you guys what I can build in different styles on a smaller scale than my usual projects, with some individual mega structures to tackle, as well as densely packed villages. I have so many more projects planned and I cannot wait to show you guys my full building potential. Now, to add even more variation to the village and to enhance that fantasy theme, I included some hobbit houses embedded in the different layers of terrain. I built the original hobbit house normally and had to include a few diagonal variants along the final top layer of the village. Even though I didn't plan to include a farmer profession in this biome, I thought that it would fit nicely in one of these flat spaces I created. Plus, I couldn't leave all these villagers going hungry, so I quickly whipped up a crop farm. To bring our little custom village to life, I redesigned a few small decorations, including a cart, a small flower bed, a lantern, a bell, and a well to scatter around the village. With the decorations complete, I placed them around the village to add that finishing touch. Things are really looking lively now, but I'm not quite finished with
Бля, не, ну это очень хорошо, ну камон, ну это прям, это пипец.
The hidden lake behind the village has
скрытое озеро за
dеревней. A crazy old
деревней.
wizard lives there. Now, if you were listening closely, you may have picked up that this wizard is the one who placed the legendary sword in the Darkwood Forest for a worthy adventurer to retrieve. But he actually
он тут рассказывает, короче, он говорил во второй или первой серии, что он планирует у этой карты, чтобы была история. И это вроде башни какого-то мага, который спрятал там какой-то меч или что-то такое.
As well. He spends his days trying to unravel the mysteries of the ultimate survival world, the cursed treasure of the evil pharaoh.
А вот это он строил в прошлой серии, кстати говоря. Это обычный храм, типа он трансформировал в чуть более крутой храм. Вот.
To make this tower a little more puzzling, I added plenty of smaller roofs into the main tower, as well as a larger outcropping at the bottom, which I later on decided to tweak slightly so that it felt better connected to the rest of the building.
И дом знахаря еще сделаем, кстати. Ой, ну шейдеры такие все, ладно. Слишком все белое, мутное, ладно.
And finally, we're moving on to the Woodland Mansion, which literally could have been its own video. Now, you may have seen some of my mega transformations of Minecraft's in-game structures, but I haven't
Блин, ну тут посмотрим, что получится. Woodland Mansion в Майнкрафте довольно уродский, ну дефолтный.
The Woodland Mansion yet. For my mega transformations, I scaled things up massively. But to keep things authentic and true to survival Minecraft, I decided not to scale things up for this one. Perhaps if you guys want to see it, I'll do a mega transformation of the Woodland Mansion even crazier than this one. But for now, let's focus on this upgrade, which is still huge. So as you can see, I'm starting with the entrance and really trying to channel a menacing vibe into my building. I've seen a few Woodland Mansion transformations that give off a sort of ski lodge or log cabin vibe, which is cool, but I think a mansion should look a little bit more intimidating and ominous of the original design. I decided to make the corner of the building a little more
больше, говорит, особо не сделаю, проверяй.
Terraced at floor level and adapted the roof up top to add some more dimension before repositioning things so that the serious building can start. Whilst I get into the nitty-gritty of the building, I should probably give you a little insight into the mystery of this Woodland Mansion. Once said to be home to a rich family of merchants, this ominous mansion contains many secrets and maybe even relates to the huge treasure hunt starting at the shipwreck that I built in the last episode. Trading across the vast regions of the ultimate survival world, this family learned many secrets about the island, its history, and its inhabitants. Many attempted to infiltrate the mansion in hopes of uncovering ancient secrets, treasure, and the wizard cast protective enchantments to help keep the family safe. One day, the family mysteriously disappeared without a trace, and the mansion is now said to be home to some far more
отобразилось?
I wonder if you guys will be able to work out what really happened. Notably, the hardest part of the Woodland Mansion to tackle is the completely flat roof. However, seeing as we've essentially encapsulated the vanilla structure with the front and sides of the building now complete, we can cut away the center of the mansion to create a classic courtyard. It's very difficult figuring out how to approach this giant cube of a building. However, this definitely felt like the best approach, as it breaks up the design and adds more layers to the building. The idea, of course, is to have overlooking balconies and walkways to make the courtyard feel more airy and at the back of the courtyard, section, which is the largest part of this building. So I was able to mirror the design to the back of the mansion and then marry it up with the rest of the building. For the remaining corners of this building section, I continue the wall and roof design all the way around.
Ну что сказать, постройка больше не стала, проверяй. Пипец, ну это красиво, ладно, это очень красиво.
As well as including several roofed terraces around the back of the building. Now, with the exterior of our new mansion complete, the surrounding environment needs a little sprucing up so that it matches the new mansion's design. Using large cylinders of sand,
Скрынник, Дима, скрынник, когда такой замок, алё?
Several mountains surrounding the mansion and provide a more interesting and intimidating backdrop. Lastly, I added in the trees, rocks and shrubbery that we created earlier to finish this section of the darkwood forest. Of course, we created that perfect opening in the middle of the mansion for a courtyard, so I decorated it with pathways, bushes, flowers and a fountain. As a final addition to the mansion, I mixed in different block materials to add texture and wear and tear to the mansion. It is abandoned after all. Now you may be asking yourself, but Trixie, what about the interior? Well, I dissected the vanilla mansion just to see the different types of rooms that we're going to be dealing with. Of course, I'm not going to be able to paste the full weight of the mansion and directly transform them. However, I can build an interior that follows the same kind of style to match the vanilla interior, just with larger rooms and much more detail and decoration. As you can see, the current interior of our new mansion is a mostly hollow shell, with the remains of some of the vanilla structure. So, first things first, I had to clear everything out and neaten things up so that I could plan things properly. Using an assortment of colored wool, I mapped out and made plans for the ground level of the mansion.
Чекни описание, там что-то можно скачать. Эта карта, ее, по-моему, можно скачать, но она у него платная, поэтому... Ну, мне эта карта нахуй не нужна, даже бесплатно. Ну хотя, кстати, логично, если ее, ну, скорее всего, ее пока нельзя, наверное, скачать, да, не удивлюсь. Там пишет, что ее можно будет скачать, когда она фул будет готова. Ну да, было бы странно, если бы он выкладывал ее за платно, тем более не готовую. Ну да.
Armor stands and cobwebs to add to that creepy and abandoned vibe that we're going for. I then tackled the second floor, plotting out all the different rooms and decorating the long winding corridors.
Да, конечно, ну просто типа одно дело, когда, допустим, у тебя есть твой survival мир, где ты выживаешь и где ты сам в survival что-то такое построишь, тогда да, красота. А так зайти на подобную карту и что там делать? Пытаться там выживать, когда уже все постройки готовы, все постройки охуенные. А что тебе тогда делать?
Where I had to plan and decorate again, making sure that I included plenty of chests, which of course means some epic loot for you guys. So, for the first room, I decided this mansion needed a grand kitchen. I added a laundry area, a large cooking area, a classic chequered kitchen floor, and some tables for food prep. I then added some sinks, lighting, chests, towels, well, banners, and a whole lot more to really bring the kitchen to life, as if it was left this way many years ago. Next up is the grand bedroom. We can't have a mansion without a classic
играть и выживать.
I also added a nice big rug, a bookshelf, a little grandfather clock, a wardrobe, and some armor stands. This family's ancestors were famously members of the USW Order of Knights, so they have a pretty sweet collection.
Ну, я такого прикола не понимаю. То есть, ну, мне было бы неинтересно, если скачаю эту готовую карту, да, просто по ней бегать. Посмотри, адского босса, там 6 серий. Какого адского босса?
As well as these main rooms, there are a bunch of smaller rooms throughout this huge mansion. And who knows, I might have even added a secret.
Так, что-то еще будет? Что-то еще? А, походу все, да?
And last but not least, we have the abandoned zombie village to tackle, which I of course had to
zombie деревня.
For this area, I adapted some of the darkwood village buildings so that they looked more ruined and abandoned. If you're wondering why this village has been left like this, it all started many years ago when a plague began to spread into the darkwood village. Terrified that they might have brought this plague with them, the darkwood villagers wouldn't allow the survivors to settle there. With nowhere else to go, the outcast surviving villagers fled across the river to the jungle and turned to a life of pillaging. Their story continues in the jungle. Which is адский босс. Это сериал или что? But anyway, as you can see, this little fishing village would have been a picturesque little community in its heyday. Maybe as a side quest, you guys could cleanse this village of its plague.
А чье производство?
And last but not least, to finalize our abandoned zombie village and
ой, ну что-то деревья такие сильные здесь. Ладно.
Let's take a look at all of our progress.
Все. Ну вот эта деревня получилась прям, блин, очень крутой. Плюс еще и сзади горы, где есть секретное озеро и вот эта башня мага. Ну даже просто по задумке это охуенно. Эх. А это просто какого-то чела? На стриме, говорят, нельзя. Почему? Если это просто какого-то чела. А, это 18+. А, нет, тогда спасибо. Я звук оставит. Обнови страницу, значит, вот и все. Братан, елки-моталки. Это что, первый раз в интернете, первый раз видос какой-то смотришь. Ой.
As you can see, this video has taken a lot of time and hard work. Which biome should I do next?
Так, короче, which biome should I do next?